We are here with Bishop T.D. Jakes, the author of this brand new book, Build Your Vision from the Ground Up, Soar. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
What does it look like to soar for T.D. Jakes?
For T.D. Jakes, I am soaring. I'm living in my purpose. I am seeing the things that I envision and that I sense were my God-ordained purpose manifested in my life. And then steering through the winds and the external climates is what soaring is all about.
Do you ever look back? I mean, I can read all of these accolades. Like, I'm amazed at all the things that you do. I'm surprised that you're still standing. Preacher, pastor, producer, entrepreneur, TV host, CEO, husband, father, I can go on and on and on. Are you amazed at all that you have been able to accomplish?
I didn't really know it till I looked back at it. While I was doing it in real-time speed, it didn't really feel that way. It was really the outworking of the internal. There was that much diversity inside of me as it relates to things that I was interested in. I'm interested in almost everything, and I'm fairly fearless when I go after something. And I say that with caution because the real truth of the matter is it's not that I don't feel fear, I don't let fear control my choices.
You talk about your father and learning from your mother. Your mother was a teacher. She also had a couple of properties that she was a landlord of.
Yes.
Your father, you call him a hustler at times.
Yeah.
Before he had
in a good way.
In a good way. Before he started his own janitorial services. But you said, and I want to read, it's page 18. You say, my father's vision was limited. He was able to build his flying machine and get it into the air, but he didn't know how to help it soar. Explain that.
Well, you know, my father knew, because he came from a hustling background where you had to have 5 or 6 different jobs in order to make ends meet. You were talking about back in the 60s in America, you're talking about a time in our country that there was racial tensions and it was very difficult to get ahead as a minority. My father had to do a lot of different things in order to put bread and butter on the table for his children. So when he started building his entrepreneurial suits, he is still a very hands-on person. And when you're a very hands-on person as an entrepreneur, you have limited your ability to soar because you have not allowed yourself to reproduce yourself in the lives of delegation to other people. You've got your hands on everything. You've only got 2 hands, so that limits what you can do, where you can be, and how much money you can make. Ideally, you want to go from a state of doing to a state of being, where it's not about what you do, it's about thinking rather than doing, because you can hire people to do, but you can't hire people to think.
You started in a church with 10 people. And I look at Potter's House now and I'm like, how? So when you were in that church with 10 people, and I've heard you talk about it, you preached to those 10 people like there were 1 million people.
Absolutely.
You gave it all. What was your vision back then? Because it had to start, as you say in the book, it had to start with vision before you could soar.
I wanted to see what was in me. It wasn't about who was in front of me. I was trying to get out what was in me. And I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew that it was strong enough that I couldn't stop where I was. It was about me and God. It wasn't about them. It's never been about them. It's about me and him, and finding a way in which I can be a better conduit of what he created me to express in the earth. And I got to practice on them. And I was honored to do so. But I wasn't counting heads as a goal, because when I had a small church, it sounds bad, but at the time I was really proud of those 10 people. Course, you know, I was really honored that he asked me to be the pastor of those 10 people. I took it very seriously. And I don't think that you can be a great person until you can take a small assignment seriously. It is the details that separates a 5-star hotel from a 2-star. And those details often are overlooked because people go after visions of grandeur rather than quality. They go after quantity. I really never asked God to make me bigger. I just kept asking him to make me better.
Wow.
And in the process of trying to get better at doing what he created me to do, bigger was a byproduct of getting better, and it was a byproduct that was scary. Because I had never seen it on the scale. I ended up in the Georgia Dome with 86,000 women, breaking all records, and even their Super Bowl records and the Billy Graham record. Well, for a guy who grew up on the side of the hill in West Virginia and had 10 members in his church, that's a lot to manage. That's a lot of pressure. while you're raising a family for the first time and having teenagers for the first time in your life. So my life was blessed but tempestuous, because being blessed is work. Harvest is equally as much work as sowing.
We talk about the Georgia Dome, you talk about your ministry to women. That, I can go in so many different directions with that, because honestly, Bishop Jakes, I don't know of any other male pastor that is so in tune with understanding the female so well that you could speak directly to us, and we are so blessed by what you say. Where does that wisdom come from? And just understanding what we need.
I was my mother's best friend, and always have been. I loved her. She took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself, and in turn I took care of her when she couldn't take care of herself, and she died in my arms. I was not only her baby boy, I was her best friend, her confidant. I knew all of her secrets, I knew everything about her, and I was so enthralled with her intellect and her brilliance that I never had to climb over chauvinism as it relates to respecting the fact that a woman could be beautiful and still be bright. I didn't see them as mutually exclusive. So I didn't have those kinds of hurdles to come over. And because my mother wasn't raised in a traditional, I ended up in a Pentecostal church. My mother did not come from that background. She was an intellect, and she was raised in a very traditional Southern Baptist atmosphere. And so the infusion of that and my father being AME made me global in my perspectives.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was able to see women through a different lens and prism. I had a sister who adored me, and I watched her grow up, so I saw different ages and stages, and I listened to all of their secrets. And then as a pastor, I think it's important as a pastor that you don't become so engrossed with being a teacher that you stop being a student. Every person you counsel is teaching you. Every person you go visit in prison or in crisis or giving birth or at a funeral is teaching you. It would be a disgrace to have spent 41 years doing something and not become a little bit more adept at it.
You've poured into so many lives, and I know that's probably why you wrote this book, is because you wanted to be able to pour into the next generation. Is that, am I putting words in your mouth?
Well, yeah, I definitely want to pour into the next generation. I'm really fascinated with millennials and where they're going, and I really feel like that they are the children of baby boomers, and I feel called, almost fatherly, to help them accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. I wrote the book because I see America caught in a quagmire as it relates to relationships between underserved communities and the general populace. I wrote the book because I see a global problem which has provoked terrorism. And as we seek to contain terrorism, I don't think we're going to be well served until we get the underlying causes that creates terrorism in the first place. Whether you're talking about terrorism or whether you're talking about underserved communities in America or Canada, anywhere else, it is when inequities are not resolved, that when we ignore people's pain long enough, they rise up in deplorable ways and do heinous things just to be heard. So I wrote this little book to begin a dialogue about entrepreneurship that takes the onus off of outsiders to develop your dreams and brings it back to you. And the book says that it is possible to have meager beginnings and still be incredibly competent and successful. It is not a get-rich book, because I'm not here to tell you what your dream is. Your dream might be to be a mother and have 3 children and live on a farm. But I'm telling you that if you're not intentional about your dream, you will never accomplish it, and you will never get it in the air, and it will never soar.
You talked about fear at the beginning. How much does fear play a role in people being able to soar, taking flight?
I think that fear is an important part of it. For a lot of people, they have the kind of paralysis that is resulted from fear driving their lives and making their choices. And so I don't think that that's a good fear to have, but I do think a certain amount of fear is important. I'm not happy till I'm a little bit scared. I live off the adrenaline of the challenge of being in a fight with something bigger than me. I can find God more clearly when I'm in trouble. because the Bible said he's a present help in trouble. So if I'm not willing to be in trouble, I'm not willing to be in the company of God, because he lives in a place where we are terrified. Our extremities become his opportunities. So I'm really at my best when I'm thrown off of my comfort zone and out into the air where anything can happen. And that's what Soar is all about, is getting into the air where you find your wings and find out who you are and find out what you can do. And you cannot find that place in safety.
What's your advice to the next generation pastors, preachers that are coming up?
Don't imitate us. Don't imitate us.
Don't imitate Bishop T.D. Jakes.
No, no. Do you. Learn from us, glean from us, but Joshua shouldn't be Moses. He benefited from Moses. God doesn't do encores. Be an original. Find your voice. Find out what's unique about you. Learn from the things I did right and wrong and improve the process, and let's keep it moving.
What would you tell the younger T.D. Jakes?
Oh, gosh. Get prepared for a world that you could never imagine. Don't prepare for the world you see, because you won't be there long.
Thank you so much, Bishop.
It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, it's been a pleasure for us. Thank you.